Hello, everyone. This is your PF debate tutor, and today I'm presenting a topic lecture for this month's topic, resolved in the United States, the benefits of the use of generative AI in education outweighs the harms. So the reason why I wanted to make this video was because, first of all, in Virginia we have states soon, but second, a lot of the topic lectures that I found online were either very vague or did not give specific evidence for their arguments. So if you're looking for specific evidence and how you get to an argument in or essentially just creating an argument in the first place, this video is going to be perfect for you. So, you might be asking yourself, what is generative AI? Well, according to MIT, they say that it's a machine learning model that is trained to create new data rather than making a prediction about specific data set. A generative AI system is one that learns to generate more objects that look like the data it was trained on. Indeed, IBM says that generative AI can generate high quality text, images, and other content based on the data. So, essentially, what this means is that a lot of AI systems take knowledge or data from existing databases or websites and then apply them to concepts or questions. So, for example, if you go on ChatGPT and you ask them, how do you solve this math problem? They go onto a database and they find the concepts or the equations for that math problem, and then they solve the problem themselves using the concept. So, going on to ChatGPT, UCA says that it's the ability to generate responses like humans in real time based on the user's input. However, the chatbot or ChatGPT may generate incorrect information or have a comprehensive understanding of a topic because answers are still based on data that are limited to 2020 and prior. Right. So a lot of these chatbots have only limited access to databases 2020 and before, and also they have access to only free websites and databases, not the paywall stuff. That means that when you ask someone like ChatGPT a current event or like what's happening in this book, most of the time they can't respond to that because a lot of the information that they give is paywalled, which means that they can't access it. Remember that sources like ChatGPT are open source, which means that they only gather information on the web and not based off paying like websites or articles money in order to get information. So let's go on to context. Generative AI has seen a massive spike in evolution over the past years. As Toloka23 writes, the rise of the internet led to what has become an explosion in the amount of data being collected and processed. In the 2000s, the processing power of computing machines has reached the level essential for dealing with enormous data flows. New technologies and concepts have emerged that support the development of artificial intelligence. With more people joining the internet and with more users contributing actively to multiple websites, ChatGPT is able to access more information from these databases, which means that over time, they get more and more information and they're able to respond better to these questions because they have access to more data over the web. So, you might be asking yourself, what is generative AI's role in today's world? Well, Harvard 24 says that 51% of young people ages 14 to 22 report using generative AI, getting information, and brainstorming. The fact is that ChatGPT and DeepSeek and all these other chatbots have had an enormous influence on people existing right now. But then, Alexander 24 says that generative AI has been adopted at a faster pace than PCs or the internet. This is a massive phenomenon because so many people have been able to adopt a practice that has been slowly developing from 2023. Think about it. Almost nobody heard of generative AI even before like 2023 or even 2022. But the fact that it's become so profound in today's society shows that a lot of people really like this concept and they're able to adopt to it more. Like in the past, things like PCs or the internet, they took several decades to adopt, while generative AI has at most been 2 to 3 years to be massively adopted by a lot of people. But then, Rosenbaum24 says that 70% of K 12 students had a favorable view of chatbots. Among undergraduates, that rises to 75%, and among parents, held favorable views of AI chatbots. A lot of people are viewing these chatbots as good, as they see that chatbots can help provide academic information that helps them boost their academic performance, and also it provides them information that is required or a necessity in their daily lives. So, going on to framing, this is essentially kind of how the pro and the con are going to argue this topic. So, for the pro, the overarching idea is that the AI is a key tool in aiding both students and teachers in schoolwork. For example, teachers right now are extremely burdened by schoolwork, right? But AI can help improve the efficiency. I'll get onto that more later in the video, but just remember that the overarching idea for the pro is that the AI is just a really good tool for people in general. For the con, AI is essentially just a replacement for critical thinking and also teachers. Because AI has grown so powerful over the past few years, a lot of people worry that it could replace how people think and how normal jobs. Like, for example, a lot of people are saying that AI can replace a lot of jobs. They're already replacing a lot of jobs. Like, for example, in the computer science field, AI is essentially just taking all the entry level jobs, right? So there's just growing fear that AI can just essentially just replace humanity, which is just overall bad. And basically, what you're going to be kind of thinking about in this video is that is AI impactful or is it malicious, right? Those are the two clashing ideas in this topic that should be discussed, and essentially how this most arguments end up going to. So let's start on AF arguments first. Honestly, I think that in this topic, Neg has a little bit better arguments, but there are also a lot of good arguments for the AF as well. So for the first, generative AI would assist in special education learning. The uniqueness is that a lot of people are entering the special education force right now. As Ewan McKinley writes, the number of public school students who receive special education services has swelled over the past 5 years by 70%. That's really bad because there's a shortage of special education teachers. As White 25 writes, that special education represents the most severe shortage areas, with 98% of school districts reporting difficulty filling those positions. According to the Department of Education data, more than 60% of states report special education as their highest needing field. So right now, what's happening is that because there's been so many increases in special education, or like how the number of people attending special education, a lot of these teachers are feeling burdened. And as a result, there's a lot of shortages. So essentially, AI is the best solution to this problem. As Soong24 writes, that AI fosters inclusion for diverse learners and helps students with disabilities by automating time-consuming tasks, which saves teachers' times and allows them to focus on more direct student interaction and personalized teaching. So, what that essentially means is that AI is able to reduce the tasks that require these special education teachers to do, and instead they allow them to focus more on direct student teaching, right? That's really good because these teachers can then spend less time on paperwork and more time on focusing on these students. The impact is that by automating tasks and doing the jobs that give special education teachers difficulty and burnout, we can fill the needs of almost 15 million special education students nationwide, as special education is one of the most underfulfilled educator jobs in the industry. So I think this argument is really good because right now special education is really struggling, right? There's a lot of job shortages and there's a lot of people who say that they need help, right? Generative AI is really good because it reduces these time consuming tasks, like for example, doing paperwork, or even I would say kind of just guiding lesson plans, right? And using generative AI is really good because teachers can then reduce burnout and focus more time on helping these students with disabilities. I would say like this argument, generative AI doesn't necessarily replace teachers, right? They just accommodate them. And that's kind of a theme you'll be seeing across all the AF arguments I present to you, is that generative AI is not a replacement, it's an accommodation. But with that, let's go to our second AF argument, which is that generative AI would assist in teacher efficiency in general. So right now, teachers are burning out because of administrative needs. As Click 25 writes that teachers work beyond the 40-hour work week due to repetitive paperwork. Many teachers are caught in a cycle of documentation rather than being able to devote themselves to educating, experiencing high levels of stress and burnout. That hurts students because Paper Co writes when teachers don't have the emotional support they need to perform at the top of their game, they're unlikely to have the mental energy to offer that same support to students who need assistance, which can lead to widened achievement gaps, classroom management issues, and stress contingent. That means that, for example, a lot of teachers are doing out of office hours, and they're also kind of saying that, oh, a lot of this documentation is really harmful towards us because we spend more time on doing these paperworks rather than teaching kids, right? So as a result, these teachers have very low emotional or mental health, which is like essentially not good, right? Uh, but then by affirming AI can improve teacher efficiency, as Carnegie Learning says that teachers are stretched thin as they strive to meet demands. Generative AI is well suited to address these needs. Teachers who use AI are finding benefits. 42% found that using AI reduced the time spent on administrative tasks, and notably, only 1% of respondents found no benefit to using AI in the classroom. So, overall, as we've seen in the past, when you invest in generative AI in teacher efficiency, overall, you see that a lot of teachers are saying that it helps them a lot with their efficiency. The impact is that by automating document tasks for teachers, it will help reduce their stress and burnout, which improves their direct teaching with students. That's really important because it grows a lot of students' academic success and mental preparation. Think about it. A lot of students depend on teachers on teaching them concepts. If teachers are more able and have the efficacy to teach these students in the first place, they're more likely to succeed, which this impact can be very big because you can say that the overall workforce gets benefited because millions will be able to get higher paying jobs or they'll be able to be more successful in life. Let's go into the third AF argument. Generative AI facilitates better student decision making or creativity. So right now, student creativity is kind of low, right? A lot of students are falling through the cracks in the education system and there needs to be help. The current education system is failing us, as Steiner 24 writes that despite nearly $200 billion in emergency federal spending on K 12 schooling, students are doing worse than a decade ago, and lower performing students are today less capable of doing math than they were 35 years ago. So that's just like a crazy number, right? So like even though we've invested so much into student performance, they're actually doing worse than they've done decades ago. So essentially what it means is that right now we need something to change us, right? We need something to improve the education system because obviously the current methods are not working. That's when generative AI comes in, as AI can enhance creativity and serve as a key collaborator for students. As Monash University 25 writes, generative AI can serve as a collaborative partner in creative learning experiences across all sectors of education. Indeed, Charmo 23 adds on to this, saying that even when we mock AI for making up information, we dismiss the actual creativity that underpins it, in the sense of making novel or unusual associations as opposed to replicating existing facts. So what this means is that AI just doesn't they don't create like plagiarism, right? They actually encourage new ideas. Remember how I was like telling you in the beginning of the lecture how AI takes from existing databases and applies it to existing concepts? That means that they can create new ideas and new performances without actually doing just copy pasting, right? And the impact is that generative AI does not replace student critical thinking. Rather, it serves as an assistant in helping students create more thoughtful and impactful ideas, spreading positive thinking. This can be a very big impact compared to the second argument as well, as you can say that millions of students can like have if they have creative thinking, then when they go into the workforce, they're able to perform better, which leads to more economic growth. Or you can generalize these arguments to a lot of really good arguments. But the main idea is that AI does not replace critical thinking. It helps them grow their thinking. It helps them perform better when they're able to generate ideas that they're able to essentially elaborate on. And the last argument for the app that I made was that Generative AI closes the gap in learning inequality. Right now, schools are extremely underfunded. As TCF20 writes, the US is currently underfunding its schools by $150 billion annually, robbing more than 30 million children of the resources they need. School districts with high concentrations of Latinx and Black students are much more likely to be underfunded than majority white districts and face much wider funding gaps at average deficit of more than $5,000 per student. There's a huge gap between public and private schools. As Barchet 20 writes, the funding gap between rich and poor schools grew 44%, and the richest 25% of school districts spent $1,500 more per student. So these numbers like $5,000 or $1,500 may seem small, but when you essentially generalize it to every student in the school, that's a lot of money, right? So what we can see right now is that a lot of these rich schools, because they can spend more on these on their students, and because they're able to have better education, there's right now a very big inequality gap. However, AI helps to solve the learning inequality gap as AI essentially evens out the playing field. As Harvard finds that in traditional classroom settings, the curriculum is a fixed entity, often leaving behind students who struggle in certain areas while not challenging those who excel. However, with the advent of AI driven adaptive learning platforms, this no longer needs to be the case. The implementation of AI powered platforms has shown promising results in increasing engagement and improving learning outcomes. So, when you give AI to everyone, not only the rich schools, but everyone free access to it, they're able to use ChatGPT or DeepSeek to help them with their curriculars. They're able to promote creative thinking. They're able to essentially just help them with their schoolwork or their tasks, which is overall really good because you don't need spending for ChatGPT. You don't need spending for these chatbots, right? It's free to everyone. Everyone can use it, which is overall really good for making the equality gap more closer. But then the impact by providing free open source generative AI to everyone, models like ChatGPT and DeepSeek allow everyone to learn and generate high quality analysis, which gives insight to every student, raising their academic performance and likelihood for success in the future. So what this means is that a lot of people right now are struggling, right? They're falling through the cracks of the education system. But when you vote for the affirmative, you close the gap because everyone's able to create more generate high thinking, right? So which means that they are able to perform better at schools. They're able to have more creative thinking. They're able to improve their voices, which is really important because especially right now, there's a huge learning inequality between private and public schools. But when you give ChatGPT to these educators, to the students, you're able to make sure that the education that everyone is given is more fair. But let's go on to neg arguments. I think that in this topic, neg arguments are a lot more persuasive because they're able to spread the idea that overall ChatGPT or DeepSeek or these other chatbots are just overall not good for education. So for the first argument, generative AI is inherently racist. So right now, current systems and policies are good at ensuring equality and fairness for everyone. So for example, school systems, as Reckley24 writes, by applying rules consistently and fairly across all classrooms, the schools create a more positive and equitable environment for all students. Right now, the school system is really good, right? They're spreading things like equality for minorities, right? They're able to spread these positive policies that help ensure that there's equality in these spaces. However, AI is prejudiced, as Band23 writes that generative AI is prone to both data and algorithmic bias. Data biases originate from the data provided to models during the training phase of the model development. Algorithmic biases are introduced during the inference phase of model development, largely from how algorithms are designed and tuned. So essentially, a lot of these chatbots are tested by researchers and experimenters, right? However, sometimes they introduce their unintended biases, right? Which is really bad because if you can't fix an internal issue, it will always be there. So generative AI could pose a huge threat if it is internally racist and it's producing outcomes that are not reflective of equality or what us as a modern society stand for today. So, Because generative AI is an internally flawed system, as it was tested with gathering data that includes biases, it can provide information that is inaccurate and discriminatory towards certain people, groups, and ideologies. There are a variety of impacts which could lead to, for example, face recognition bias, information gathering biases, etc. If we implement generative AI into every aspect of society, that could be a huge issue because generative AI could discriminate other people, they could section other people off, and it would overall just be not good. Because if we give so much power to these AIs to decide essentially who is good, who is bad, then it could essentially just lead to a lot of biases because the creators of these systems have unintended implementations of biases in the code itself. The second argument is that generative AI creates dependency. So, right now, students are great critical thinkers, and critical thinking is extremely important. As Nichols College writes, that critical thinking is a fundamental skill that allows individuals to analyze, evaluate, and interpret information objectively and rationally. It goes beyond merely accepting information at face value. Instead, critical thinkers are equipped to delve deeper, question assumptions, and explore various perspectives before arriving at well informed conclusions. So, us as a society value critical thinking extremely like a lot, right? Because critical thinking is what helps people go beyond, like above and beyond, because they're able to create solutions that are better than the standard. They're able to continuously innovate, and they're able to that's essentially what propels us as a society, because people are able to think better, which creates more innovation. However, generative AI kills thinking and incentivizes students to rely on them. As Moses24 writes, that over reliance on generative AI can lead to a decline in high order cognitive thinking. The use of generative AI tools makes it easy to obtain sources and reduces the motivation to conduct independent research, exploration, and analysis in order to arrive at their own findings and conclusion. So I was actually reading this article, and there's a lot of data for this that specifically says how generative AI is directly correlated with a lower cognitive thinking, right? Because more students are dependent on like these chatbot tools to create answers for them without actually thinking about how do you reach that answer, right? As a result, current AI models are bad, as Dolan24 writes, that increased reliance on ChatGPT associated with higher levels of procrastination and memory loss, negative impact on performance as reflected in students' GPA. Excessive use might lead to detrimental effects on learning behaviors and outcomes. So all of these researches essentially show that when students use AI models, they have less critical thinking, which leads to them having essentially they cannot create their own answers. They have lower academic performance because they can't use these tools in tests and like actual like standardized stuff, right? Which means that they just are unable to propel themselves in society. So as a result, reduced student critical thinking can lead to long-term cognitive decline. Without students being able to freely think themselves, they could lose academic opportunities and future potential to contribute more to society. With these people being unable to think more, they're unable to think outside the box, they essentially are unable to compete for these very high skill or high paying jobs because they require people who are have individualized talent, right? People who think like they have critical analytic skills. But a lot of these people, if they're unable to learn such things in the school system, then the future workforce could be at risk because millions could rely on ChatGPT in their early years, but then they're unable to think in their adult years, which leads to them underperforming in the workforce. Okay, that was it. That was essentially my topic lecture. There's a lot of other arguments in this topic, and I think essentially this topic is very interesting in the fact that it's very diverse. You can make a lot of arguments onto why ChatGPT or these other chatbots are good or bad, but these arguments that I covered in this topic lecture are essentially the ones that I think are the most compelling or the most powerful. But you don't have to use these. It's just kind of idea, right? It's kind of just spreading what can you do for this topic. So overall, those are my ideas. That's why I think about what people should be essentially rearing or going around for this topic. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.